You're about to listen to this audio-only episode of the Care Conversations podcast with Debbie Harris, the co-founder of Autumna. This episode is audio-only because the file's corrupted when we went to upload, but it is still well worth a listen because Debbie discusses why 95% of all care seekers go online to start their care seekers journey. Debbie also discusses the power of marketing for care homes, and also introduces us to OpenScore, her new system for ranking care homes. Hope you enjoy. Let's start at the beginning then. Back in 2006, that's when your care journey started with your Aunt Margaret. What was that journey like for you?
Well, I fell into needing social care. Auntie Margaret, who I didn't really know, who lived 30 miles away, I'd met twice in my life, got a UTI, was taken to hospital. 2 days later, we didn't even know she'd gone to hospital. 2 days later, we get a telephone call saying, right, she's ready to leave. You need to find a care home. And I was the one who had to find it. I mean, literally, that's the notice we had. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table going through the yellow pages, if you actually remember what yellow pages are or were. And there were 18 care homes in Tunbridge Wells, which is where we were looking. And there are now 34 care homes around Tunbridge Wells. And I just literally rang every single one of them, but I didn't have a clue what I was asking.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of the CQC. It wasn't actually called the CQC at the time. We've had a few incarnations since then. But I'd never heard of them. I didn't know what the regulator was. I didn't know what questions I should be asking. I didn't know how much it was going to cost. And I honestly didn't know what would be the best care home for Auntie Margaret. More by luck than judgment, I found the right one. At least I hope I did. She lived very happily there for a couple of years. But, you know, I didn't really know Auntie Margaret, so the emotion wasn't there for me as much as it is if it's your mum or your dad. And we speak to families all the time who are really struggling with the emotional element of finding care. We support people who work in care to find care services for their loved ones because they suddenly realise, A, how difficult it is, B, how emotionally involved they are, and it means that they're not able to work it out for themselves. We support a lot of people who work in care. It's quite an interesting situation, but it's the emotion that really gets you.
Yeah, I suppose it's such a great point because I've been working on a number of care home websites, and often it's all about the colour and the everyday life, but it doesn't talk about the start of the care journey and getting into care, all of those questions and considerations that people have when they're in their care journey. What were some of the key questions that you had during your care journey, and kind of how did you go about finding the information?
Well, I didn't know what the questions were. I mean, it's as basic as that. I know it sounds stupid, doesn't it? But it's like saying, I'm going to go out and buy a new Range Rover every year, because that's basically what it's going to cost you if you're self-funding your care. Yeah. I'm going to go out and buy a new Range Rover every year, but I don't actually know how to drive. I don't know anything about what the car should or shouldn't be able to do. And remind me again, what's a car? I mean, it's as fundamental as that. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's honestly the truth. And I would suggest that's the same. If you're looking for a care home, I would suggest 99% of the families we speak to fall into that category. What's a car?
Amazing. So it's that information, but I suppose you're also... people in a care journey are battling kind of preconceptions, almost misconceptions of care. Yeah. I know my view, having now visited numerous amounts of care homes, like I'm actually a lot more positive about it. I was like, oh, wow, actually, this is not what it's like. Yeah. And I suppose the industry battles those preconceptions. Like, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the misunderstanding, I mean, I'll give you an example. My mum and dad, 90 and 92, God bless them, still living at home, still driving, God help anybody else around them, but they are. And their perception of a care home, still fully capable, their perception of a care home actually goes back to what the workhouse used to be like. That's their connotation for that generation. the workhouse, for God's sake. Whereas my generation just doesn't understand. Obviously, if you're in the sector, you hopefully do, but my generation, who it would be me looking on behalf of my parents, generally, it's usually a family member looking. Yeah. Our perception is what we read in the paper, which is without question negative, and what friends have told us, generally negative, and no other information upon which to base any decisions on. Yeah. And because where in society do we hear about social care if it's not on the news or in the newspaper? I mean, if you take healthcare as an example, casualties been running for decades. Yeah. You've got other 24 hours in A&E. You've got a lot of background information about them. Nothing about social care. Yeah. I think we need a sitcom about social care, and I think we need a documentary about social care, just to give people insight into what it actually is. What does it mean? I mean, we had the one about the kids in a care home, didn't we? 4-year-olds in a care home or something. That was a documentary. It was brilliant. It was really brilliant. But not often.
And it's amazing. It's such a treasure chest of content as well, in terms of the stories. Like,
oh my goodness,
there'd be so much positive news to come out from it. It's almost like it's got like an image problem. And, what are some ways that care homes can help battle against that image problem?
Well, I think it actually goes back to your point of when you went into a care home. Yeah. You were surprised. You started to learn about the fact that it's a little community, really. Yeah. And I think that's what the care provider needs to get across. So when we built Autumna, we're just 5 years old. When I built it, we had such a background of information about what self-funding families in particular looked for. And I mentioned self-funding because they're the people who have a choice about where they go. Yeah. So we had a lot of background information about what was affecting their decision-making process. So we built Autumna with all of this information included in a profile for a care home, because we realised that the only way the provider was going to be able to differentiate themselves from the care home down the road or next door was by getting across their personality. And I think that's what we need to try and get providers to do more of. So it's stuff like videos, real pictures, not stock images. Yeah. We have a tab as well that gives the Facebook feed. So when you open it up, you can see what the home has posted in the last day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, month. Yeah. And it's all about giving it an insight into what that service offers, so that when you look at it and your mum is a very keen gardener and you can see residents in the garden planting vegetables and stuff, you're going, oh, she'd like that. That's what we need to get across. It's those little details.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. For me, I'm staggered that I'd say, 80% of care home websites don't even have like a promotional video or a testimonial. Video is so easy. It's a quick win for care homes to get across that what the home is like. And I think that helps break the barriers, the perceptions beforehand. And, just coming into marketing for you, like what are ways that care homes can effectively market themselves away from kind of video? Like what else do they need to do?
Well, I mean, for the care provider, it's all about generating the inquiries. Yeah. That's what we do. We're lead generation. We focus on the self-funding sector. We're experts in that area. That's what I do. That's my background. If you are looking at attracting a client that is going to pay you £1,500 a week, then for me, you need to be open and transparent and really clear about the ethos of the home, what that home looks like, and you need to give people an insight into your personality and the personality of the manager. So going back to videos, I think staff videos, particularly the manager, and I know managers turn around a lot, but I think they're invaluable because the managers running the ship.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a headmaster at a school, isn't it? They absolutely run the ship. So I think they're critical. But one of the things we started saying during COVID, when you couldn't go into a care home to look at it, we were saying to the care homes, open your online windows and doors. Get this stuff online. You've got all of the information. Get it online and promote yourself in that way. That has to be the way to do it. I mean, we estimate now 95 post-COVID, 95% of the decision-making process for a self-funding family looking for a care home takes place online. 95%.
And I get the feeling that a lot of care homes are still almost, putting adverts in the local newspaper or, doing leaflet drops around the local area. Like,
definitely the leaflet drops.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I don't think I don't know where my leaflets go in the
exactly. But so for Autumna and, obviously marketing teams as well, like, how do you convince, marketing teams at care homes to actually make that switch from offline to online?
Well, I think they must be getting something back from the offline stuff. Otherwise, one hopes they wouldn't still be doing it because it's a very expensive option. But I think one of the difficulties is you can't track what has worked and what hasn't worked, whereas with online you can. So I just think it's a bit of a blunt tool nowadays. And if somebody's looking for care, we've already had this conversation about you literally drop into it the day you need to start looking for it.
Yeah.
Well, what are the chances of somebody dropping a leaflet through your door a week before you actually need to start looking for it, or a week after you need to start looking for it? And it's pretty hit and miss as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. We often say to the care homes that we work with, it's all about the customer journey, and that kind of breaks down into 3 stages: awareness, consideration, decision stage. You look at their sites and they've got a lot of information about the consideration stage or something like that. There's no awareness content in terms of what things actually are at the basic level, like what is dementia care. And it seems like they're missing a trick there, and it's just focusing on that front. So I think let's take a step. They found homes, they're looking at care homes, they've gone on to Autumna, they've shortlisted a number of homes. Next stage is the home visits and the initial contacts by the care home staff. What are kind of effective ways that care homes can get better in that area?
Well, the first way would be reply to the inquiry. Slightly worrying how many don't, or not quickly enough.
Yeah.
However, again, post-COVID, and as a result of some of the stuff we've been doing, we are starting to see some providers really get on top of their lead inquiries, to the point where when we send a lead to a care provider, it's a really highly qualified lead with a lot of intent on behalf of the care seeker. They've filled out a form, they've submitted the form. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and we've identified the appropriate providers, and we send out the shortlist to the care seeker, to the family, say these are the ones we've shortlisted, they'll be in touch soon, and simultaneously we notify the care provider, so that email goes out to the care seeker and the care provider at the same time. One care provider called me up about 30 minutes after this notification had gone out and said, "Debbie, did you delay sending out our inquiry notification?" No, they're all simultaneous. Why? He said, because we've just called the client and they've already found a care home.
Wow.
This is 30 minutes after I've sent it. And I said, okay, let me look into this and I will let you know what's happened. We spoke to the family, and what had actually happened was one of the care homes had called her within 5 minutes of receiving the inquiry, had been so charming on the phone, had encouraged her or invited her to come and visit the home that afternoon, so that when the next care home called up, she said, "Oh, it's all right, I found somewhere, thanks."
Amazing.
And so in line of your question, what can care providers do? Respond quickly. The early bird really does get the worm, and be what a care seeker needs you to be. Listen to what they need and respond to that. It's not a case of, hi, you've we've had an inquiry, you're looking for a care home, how can I help? That's not it. It's, oh, Mrs. Jones, and it's it's people skills.
Yeah.
People skills, and the care providers that are getting it right are reaping the benefits.
Amazing. We'll come on to Autumna and your model and the growth journey there. But let's stick on the care industry at the minute in terms of we know that there's two key challenges that care homes face. One is obviously occupancy rates, keeping them high. The other is retaining staff or gaining new staff to fill there. And I spoke on a podcast with Manjaz, leader of Leader Care, recently, and he suggested that the care industry is struggling to attract young people into care. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think I would. I think I know Anita Goyal is heavily involved in getting involved with schools and colleges and universities to try and attract younger applicants. And let's face it, that's where that's the workforce that I think could be very valuable going through to then build a career. But I think that's another thing that the social care sector really lacks, and that's a career progression opportunity. When you look at healthcare, there's a career progression. Social care, you just sort of flop into it and then flop back out of it again. There is nowhere that you can really work towards, and I think that needs to be addressed, and I know Skills for Care are looking at that.
Yeah, fair. And I suppose the kind of other area is suppliers to the industry as well. We met. My first impression of you was a amazingly positive one. You spent half an hour on a phone call with us explaining the offer that Autumna gives care homes. I was with Ashbury Healthcare at that point. How can suppliers to the industry get better at providing care homes the information they need to make a choice to invest?
So what do you mean by suppliers? Do you mean people who provide services to the care sector?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope that we're a bit of a conduit for that, because I really strongly believe that one of the issues facing the sector as a whole is we're all disparate. We're all siloed. We're all independents. We need to come together collectively, and we need to pull together. We need to present together, and we need to educate together. So I think what we need is a vehicle that enables suppliers to the sector and care providers to demonstrate something that care seekers need, and pulls all of the information, the data, the collaboration between everybody together. We need to collaborate. We need to present a united front. Social care doesn't at the moment, in my view.
Yeah. Nice. And if any other questions on the marketing front before we move on slightly?
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah? Perfect. Okay. And when we last spoke as well, we were talking about some of the kind of key challenges in the care industry. There's been a lot of noise recently about the CQC. Can you describe what the main kind of challenge in the care industry is at the minute?
Where to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem at the moment with the CQC is they're going through their own internal challenges. But for those in social care, they are the ones who are having to manage the fallout from that. And the fallout fundamentally is that the CQC are not able to re-inspect care services frequently enough. Yeah. I was listening to a conference a couple of months ago, and apparently the average age of a CQC report in a care home is 4 years old. Yeah. So how, as a care provider, do you market your service? How, as a care seeker, do you assess whether or not that care home is any good? It doesn't matter if it's got an outstanding or an inadequate. If it's 4 years old, it's of no use to you at all. As Wes Streeting said the other day, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So we have been addressing this over the last year. And because we realised this was an issue in the sector, and what we wanted to try and create for the care seeker. I should say, everything we do at Autumna starts with, what does the care seeker need? Yeah, if we can get it right for the care seeker, so they're given the information they need, then by default we're getting it right for the provider.
Yeah.
Because they're finding their care home. So that's where we start with everything. So about a year ago, we started to think, how can we demonstrate quality of care in a care setting? And we've been working with some very big stakeholders on this across the sector. So it's not an Autumna product, it's a sector product. And what we've identified are 65, for version 1 that is, we've identified 65 data points that we've pulled together to give a score out of 10. So that the care seeker has an at-a-glance overview of the quality of care in a setting that's real, that, is last updated a couple of weeks ago, not 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So the data that we've used is being worked on constantly. I mean, it's going to be an evolving product without question going forwards for years. The roadmap on it is massive. But initially, it started off with CQC API, Food Standards Rating API, Registered Manager API. So they are critical things that we have to incorporate with the regulator. And the Registered Manager, I've already mentioned how important your Registered Manager is. So so they're in as APIs. We've then got some self-assessment that reflects food, IPC and ESG. Now, it's self-assessment because nothing else exists. There is absolutely nowhere else we can pull it from. So that's self-assessment. And then the third tranche of these data points that make up that the algorithm works on are about information for the care seeker. So this goes back to 95% of the decision-making process is taking place online. So give them the information they need to make that decision. And it includes things like prices. We still have some providers that don't put prices online. God knows why.
Yeah.
I don't get it at all. I wouldn't walk into a shop if there weren't prices in the window.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the other day I was combing through some trusted care reports for Ashbury. So like people like, are they going to look at one of the homes and stuff? And I was shocked by how many people actually like mentioned certain things like carpets or how the buildings looked and elements like that. Is it the small details that matter to people, or is that almost a distraction from some of the key decisions that they've got to make?
Well, I would hope that when you're looking for care, you've made those key decisions up here. So I'll give you an example. There are 3 things you need to know about a care home. You need to know what location you're looking in. Absolutely critical. You'd be surprised how many people get that wrong. Yeah. The type of care you're looking for, and you need to understand what your budget is. Now, everything on Autumna is built to guide somebody through that process. So if you fill in our online form, it guides you through those questions. If you look at the way we've presented the platform or the profiles of the care homes, it guides you through those things. These are the key things you need to be looking for. These are the things you need to be filtering for. Once you've done that, and you've got maybe 5 care homes, 4 care homes that meet those critical, unalterable requirements, that's when the detail starts to play. And that's where you are directly competing against your neighbours. And that's where your online presentation is critical.
Superb. So I think that's almost the industry landscape in a kind of nutshell from your perspective. Let's move on to you and your journey. Obviously started with a real life kind of care journey. Mm-hmm. Just explain to me kind of what's happened next and leading up to Autumna.
Okay, so after Auntie Margaret got settled into her care home, I just thought, I can't have been the only person that struggled with this. Yeah. So I thought I'd be very brave. I mean, this is a long time ago, before you laugh at what I'm about to say. I thought I'd be very brave, and I would set up a website and put on it everything that I wished I'd known when I was looking for care for Auntie Margaret. Now, I'd never sent an email at this point in my life, so to say it was a steep learning curve was an understatement. However, it worked, and we started to develop people looking at the site, and we started to get a whole load of information on there, and it was really starting to be useful. But then I started to think, okay, so here are the care homes, here are the questions, but how do I differentiate one care home from another? Over and above, it was star ratings at the time, and I think all we did was list 3-star ratings on the platform. So we'd already got the 3-star rating care homes, but how do I differentiate one from another? So I took the decision against legal advice to start generating care home reviews. The lawyers said, you have got to be insane. You don't want to be doing this. You'll be sued. So I thought, okay, well, let's see what happens. And I started to persuade care providers to allow us to let more like relatives, review care homes. And it started to go well. It took 2 years for the care providers to actually get on board with it. But that company was subsequently purchased by carehome.co.uk, which is now a review site. So I was the founder of those reviews. I then had a bit of time off. And then people kept coming to me and asking me, can you help me find a care home? So I set up a company called Chosen with Care. And Chosen with Care basically helps families on the ground to help find the right care home. We surrogate daughters, we were called, basically. But what's really interesting, of course, when you're on the ground with this stuff, you realise where the limitations and the problems are. And we realised within a couple of years that it was just so difficult to get information online. We were having to ring every care home, which was insanity. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to build a platform that actually gives us the information we need to find other people's families a care home. And that is basically where Autumna came from.
Perfect. So with Autumna, what's the journey been like? So I think you've got something like 10,500 care homes in your directory. How have you managed to grow it that fast in 5 years?
Yeah. So you asked me what the journey's been like. I can say it's been hell, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Yeah. We have an API. So we list every registered care provider. We've actually got 26,000 on the site. So that's home care, care homes, live-in care, and we're building a directory of retirement living as well.
Okay.
So they're all on the same platform because they all interconnect.
Yeah.
So it made sense to have them all on the same platform. We have an API from the CQC. We have CSV downloads from Scotland and Wales because they don't have APIs, and Northern Ireland. So yeah, it's hard work. No question about it.
Absolutely.
I didn't used to be grey.
I used to have hair, to be fair. So, I think as well, you mentioned already about private funders and local authority funders as well. Like, how do you kind of help private funders choose? And is that the kind of focus?
Yeah, it is for us. 85% of our inquiries are self-funding. And that's primarily because they don't have anywhere else to go. Who else do you ask? We also work with hundreds of IFAs, solicitors, accountants who refer their private clients to us. And they refer their private clients to us because they trust us. I think one of the key things for us is we do not take referral fees. I never have and I never will. So if somebody comes to me and asks me to help them find care, I'm going to find the right care for them.
Yeah.
I am not going to get money from the care provider in order to send that client to them. And I just don't think that works in social care. I mean, you're in effect selling somebody's granny's contact details, and I just don't think you should.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because that matches our philosophy as well. Like we started out as just SEO, but we've branched out
Yeah.
into all kind of marketing. We market ourselves as the audience first SEO agency.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is
It lines exactly.
yeah, exactly. It's audience first. And
Yeah.
how
Well, it takes care of itself.
yeah, exactly. So how do you convince, business owners to think about their audience first?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because I actually think the business owners are thinking about their current audience, which is their residents. And I think they do think about their audience first. I think their difficulty is when you're in that mentality of very hands-on and the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. When you're then asking somebody to go out and do marketing and to do lead generation and stuff like that, I think those are two such massively different skill sets. When you then talk to the C-suite, if they've worked their way up, they'll understand the struggles. But of course, they might be too focused on the business and not focused enough on the audience. So it's an interesting dichotomy faced within the sector. On the one hand, you're running a business, but on the other hand, you're there to care. And I actually face a similar dichotomy. So I'm running a business. Of course, the business has to be successful, otherwise I can't do what I'm doing. But I actually want to make a difference.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to make millions. I'm doing this to make a difference. And that's why I started it. That's why I have continued through it. And that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we know that care home owners and the marketing teams are potentially time and resource poor.
Really?
When they look at their options, they may not want to choose like all of the options on the market. And obviously your competitors, some like carehome.co.uk, Lottie's up and coming these days, like why should these teams choose Autumna instead?
So what makes us different?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't take referral fees, which I think is an ethical position that care providers actually should be aware, should consider.
Yeah.
We are specialists in the self-funding market. The team that answers the phone, we run a 7-day-a-week advice line on top of the directory and everything else that we do. And the team are experts. They have the empathy, they have the experience and the understanding when somebody calls us at 3:00 on a Sunday afternoon in tears because they've got to sort something out for mum. So I think it's primarily the self-funding expertise that sets us apart. Also, we've been doing this for 15 years, so we really know what we're doing. And we know specifically how to support the self-funding market. And that's born of 15 years of working with them.
Yeah, amazing. And when you think of Autumna, you are all over Autumna. Your personal brand is so strong. You're a care industry thought leader. How have you gone about building your personal brand?
It's an interesting question. Yeah. Not consciously, certainly not consciously. I took a decision at the very beginning that I wasn't going to hide behind a logo. Social care, looking for care is personal. So I've made it personal. I think it's probably as simple as that.
Yeah.
Very early on, we put my face on the website. I would really like a new photo of there because God, that's an old photo. But I'm on there. I do the videos. I stick my head above the parapet and say, I believe in this. This is what we need to be talking about. This is what we're finding. I will talk to anybody. I'm a real collaborator. At least I hope that's what the sector thinks. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't think when it's social care you can sit behind a logo.
Yeah, amazing. It's something we say to all of our clients all of the time. People buy from people. It's such a simple concept, and you're the embodiment of that. So, takeaways for like care homes, you know, there may be owners or people within care homes that think, okay, right, we need to personalize our brand a little bit. Are there any kind of tips, any channels that they should be hitting as well with their personal brand?
Do you know, I know why most providers don't do this, but I really think it's worth the effort. I think a video of your manager,
Yeah.
I think would really help. You know, the right video, a good video of your manager. And I know the manager might only be in post for a year or something, but I don't think you beat that.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I totally agree with you. I've been astounded. Me and George, the producer, we've been to a number of video shoots for care homes, and the personal stories, not just from the care home managers, the maintenance men, the chefs, they've all got stories that link them to care, and I'm astounded by it. Like, it's not just a job, is it?
No, it's definitely not. Do you know, you've reminded me of a story. So I do a lot of judging for the Care Home Awards. I do all sorts of Care Home Awards and judging and stuff. I've been doing it for years, but the one that stands out in my mind every single time was we were judging for, God, I don't even remember what the category was. It was about 3 years ago, and it was something to do with going above and beyond within the care home, and it was about a member of staff, and somebody had submitted an application, or it's not an application, what's it called when you put in an award for a nomination. Thank you. Had submitted a nomination for the gardener.
Wow.
And the story for the gardener was absolutely amazing. So this gardener, he wasn't just outside mowing the lawn and trimming the edges, he was bringing the stuff in to the residents. And in the nice weather, he was saying to them, you know, Mavis, come out and give me a hand. He'd got them all outside. He'd got them weeding. He'd got them digging. He'd got them scrubbing the veg he was growing. The story, the backstory for him. And I actually said to the care home at the time, I think you've got an absolute star there. You should have him all over your website. I don't think they ever did.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that. I mean, that, you know, if you're looking at what differentiates you from your competitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute standout one.
Yeah.
Still talking about it years later.
Yeah. Oh, there's stories like one of the chefs at one of the Ashbury homes, he was sensational as well.
Yeah.
Took the time to talk to every resident. It's like, if they didn't like something in the menu, he'd go and make them something different, so that it's just those little bits and pieces. It's that extra like effort
And you
caring.
get that across.
Yeah.
You know, and you need to do it not just on your own website, because if they're finding you via directories, and a lot of people are finding them via the directories, it needs to be on the directory. So, you know, when you come onto Autumna and you're comparing one KM against another, you need to be able to see those videos.
Yeah.
You really do.
And I think it all comes down to a feeling of trust. These families are looking to trust a care home with the care of their loved one. Like, how can you get that across on Autumna in terms of the directory? What are the trust factors that people are looking for?
Yeah, I think, you know, I agree with you entirely. It is down to trust. You are trusting that care home to look after somebody who is exceptionally precious to you, and your senses are screaming at you, don't trust them because I've read what was in the mail last week or seen what was on the news. So it's a hard hurdle to get across, I think, for a lot of providers. I think, again, it comes down to transparency and communication, understanding the manager, liking the manager. Do you know, we used to say, if when you go into a care home, if you don't get on with the manager, don't go to the care home, because you are going to butt heads every time there's a problem. And there will be problems. Be realistic about what is happening and the support that's being offered. But, you know, find people that you like. As you say, people buy from people. So a care home's greatest asset is the people that work in the care home. They're the one bit we don't see. If we get a photo of the manager, we're doing relatively well.
Yeah.
But they're the biggest asset.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you there. And I think, obviously, we're talking about care homes there, but back to Autumna, what's been your kind of biggest challenges to growth recently?
We're not actually looking to grow.
Okay.
We've been focused on OpenScore and making sure we get that right. So for us, it's about continually improving the service that we offer. It's not all about growth. We don't have people we have to pay back.
Yeah.
This is about getting it right. We're in here for the long haul. We know what we're doing. We know where we're going, and we want to get it right. Simple.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice for care home marketing teams that you can give?
So the best piece of advice for a care home marketing team would be transparency, visibility, online information. Try and persuade the staff to be visible. They're your golden asset. Don't be frightened of putting prices on the website. If the only reason you're not putting a price on the website is because you don't want your competitors to know, trust me, they know. So it's visibility and transparency, but also recognising that if with all of this marketing and lead generation you're doing, either from your own website or directories, and it's coming into the care home, it's for nothing if the staff and the team aren't picking up the lead quickly enough. You're doing it for nothing. So it's making sure there's a connection between what you're doing and when it comes in and who's managing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like, for us, obviously, this podcast has a number of reasons why we're doing this podcast. One of them's to learn from care industry leaders like yourself. Amazing. So many kind of insights. And I think the thing that I'm amazed by, I've said it a couple of times, like, whoever I talk to about the care industry, they are genuinely people that care. And for me, that's incredible.
We do. Yeah. It's too bloody hard to do it if you don't,
Yeah.
frankly. Yeah. It's much easier selling bags of crisps or something.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.